We are reading Brian Drake's Castaways of the Flying Dutchman. Chapter 25. It says Spiritus Victus Sanctivis, whatever that means. Back at the almshouse, tidying up was forgotten. All tidying up was forgotten as they sat around the big oblong table and studied the poem from the sampler, and Amy read out loud the first line, slowly. Take the commandments, pace west. John shrugged his shoulders. What's a commandment's pace? Ben had guessed, but he let Alex answer. Must mean 10 paces because there's 10 commandments. True, the old man nodded approvingly. Ben winked at Alex. Well done, pal. Away from the blessed naming place, Amy went on. Alex looked disappointed. That's not easy. Amy reasoned. Whenever a blessed naming is, we've got to take 10 paces away from it. Naming place. Any ideas, Ben? Ben looked stumped. Naming place. Let me see. Does it mean the name of a place or a name like yours and mine? Amy, Alex, John. The old ship's carpenter interrupted. I remember when I was young, I hated my full title, Jonathan. Though my ma used to say, Jonathan, you were christened, and Jonathan you shall stay. You can't change your christening name. Ned had settled down from his afternoon nap beneath the table when Ben disturbed him by banging on the table as he gritted out frustration. The blessed naming place, where is it? Recognition hit Alex like a slap in the face. Christening, naming place. It's where they baptize babies. Amy whooped delightedly and hugged him. What a clever brother you are. I've got. He's a genius. Crimson face, Alex shrugged off his sister's embrace. Where was the naming place here, John? Do you know? Ned flashed his master of thought. Right under this table, I think. Feels as if this bumpy chunk of stone, the base of something bigger, that was broken off. The Labrador shuffled lazily off to find another napping spot, remarking, Of course, I might be wrong, but it's worth a try. Ben mentally answered his friend, Thanks, pal. Now let's see if I can discover it without giving away our secret. John was stroking his beard, looking this way and that. Baptismal font. Every church has one, though I've never thought of a font being in this place. Ben patted Ned as he lumbered by. He spoke aloud to the dog so his three friends would hear. What's the matter, old boy? Not comfy enough under there? Let's take a look. Dropping on all fours, he crawled under the table. Ha! Ha! At the sound of Ben's exclamation, Amy crouched and stared under the table at him. Something there? I think so. It's a sort of raised square bit with a broken part sticking out the middle. Will it be John? The old carpenter nodded to Alex. It might be. It may be. Let's move the table. You take one side, lass. Take care of the two bricks under that leg. Stay right there, Ben. The table was moved. The boy stayed on all fours by the remnants of the baptismal font, looking up at Amy for approval, and said it was the Labrador who received her hug. Good old Ned. It was true. It was due to you we found it. Good boy. If a dog could ever smirk, Ned did. He flicked his tail toward his master. Sorry about that, pal, but credit's where it's due, you know. Nothing like a hug from a pretty girl, eh? But Ben was more intent on solving the mystery than bantering with Ned. He watched John trace the graven lettering around the limestone base with his clasp knife blade, reading aloud. I nominee partis el ent filius and spiritus sanctus. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I remember that from Sunday Mass when I was a lad. This is it. This stub is probably the column of the fount basin. How did the rhyme read, boy? Take the commandments paces west, away from the blessed naming place. Alex walked over and stood by the fount base, 10 paces west from here. Anyone got a compass? He met John's slightly disapproving stare blankly. How are we supposed to know which way west is? The old carpenter smiled. I can tell you'd never been to sea. Show him, lad. Ben faced the rear windows, warm with afternoon sunlight. West is where the sun sets over there. Alex began measuring out 10 paces solemnly in the right direction. Amy sat down on the floor beside her strange friend and whispered to him, John said that as if you've been to sea. Have you been? He tried to shrug off the question. The sea? Oh, just for a little bit. Nothing much, really. She stared curiously into his clouded blue eyes. It turned into a race through his mind. How could he tell her? Wind, waves, storm, the world of waters? A dumb boy and half-starved dog crouching in the galley of the Flying Dutchman, with Captain Vanderdeck roaring oaths at the heavens as he tried, battling his way around Cape Horn in the teeth of winter gales. Murder on the high seas, an angel dropping to deck, the numbing shock of being plunged into an icy green maelstrom of ocean. He was wrenched back to reality by John clapping a huge arm on his shoulders. Are you all right, lad? The feeling ebbed. He shook himself. Yes, mate, I'm fine. Bumped my head on the table when you moved it. I'll be all right, it's nothing. His dog had caught Ben's thought. To distract Amy, he leapt on her and began licking her face. He tried laughingly to push him off. What I've done to deserve all this? Get off me, you great silly dog. Ben shook a finger at her as he held Ned's collar. Don't blame him, Amy. You started all the hugging. Her brother called. I'm about 3 feet from the window. That's 10 paces. What happens now? The old ship carpenter took over. He paced out 10 steps, going past Alex to arrive 1 pace outside the windows in the churchyard. Your pace was shorter than a person who wrote the rhyme, mate. Mine is slightly longer. I think it's somewhere about here. He joined them together outside in the late afternoon. Amy brought the translation with her, and she read the next part. To where the heaven twins stand ever, gazing at soul's dying face. Alex winked at John. That's got nothing to do with going to sea, I'll bet. Come on, mate. Let's see you solve this one. A real friendship was beginning to show between the hesitant boy and the old carpenter. John ruffled Alex's hair as he looked around. Give me a bit of time, matey. We'll crack it. Labrador snickered as he passed Ben a thought. The heavenly twins, that could be us. The boy struggled to hide a grin. Heavenly? Not you, mate. Now stop fooling around and help us. Amy sat on the windowsill. Heavenly twins. Maybe it's those 2 stars? You know the sign of Gemini? They're always called the heavenly twins. John gazed at the sky, thinking about, only trouble is, that is, it's daylight. How could the heavenly twins watch soul's dying face? The young boy plucked a blade of grass and chewed on one end. What's a soul? Ben had heard of the expression before, so he explained. Soul is the name given to the sun. The sun sinks in the west. You heard the expression, the dying sun sank into the west. I've read it in books many a time. Amy nodded. Ben's right. So what we're looking for are two things. Heavenly twins standing ever gazing at Soul's dying face. She walked into the churchyard, grass rustling against her long skirt. Ben followed her. Together they stopped about halfway across and leaned on one of the many crooked, moss-grown gravestones. Staring at the back of the almshouse, Ben saw the twins straight away, but he waited a moment until Amy caught sight of them. She leapt upright, pointing. There they are, underneath the middle window, the twins. Two graceful fluted columns of limestone formed the window edges. Beneath them, as if supporting the columns with their wings, stood two carved stone angels, facing outward, their hands joining in prayer, faces looking upward to the heaven. Amy's voice caused a prowling jackdaw to take flight as she shouted shrilly, The heavens twins, standing ever gazing at Soul's dying face. Ned looked accusingly at his master, passing a thought. You knew that, didn't you? Before Amy called out, you'd guessed where the angels were. I must say, though, having such a real angel, those two don't bear much resemblance. Ben raised his eyebrows. Don't be hard on the stone mason, Ned. He's probably never seen an angel. Turn as a third gospel maker would to the house named of the rock. For the rock, Alex read aloud. Now I'm really stumped. I don't know any gospel makers. The old carpenter drew a silver watch from his pocket and consulted it. Well, we can all go home and think about it. You'll be wanted for dinner soon. I say we meet back here tomorrow, same time. Alex grumbled a bit. He was certain they were on to something, but John was right. Ben and his dog stood with Amy on the other side of the wall, waiting for her brother, bid his newfound friend goodbye. Alex held forth his hand. See you tomorrow morning, John. Don't worry, we'll solve it. We're doing something to save Mrs. Wynn's village for her. Not like some of the dead and alive types around the Chapel Vale, eh, mate? We won't go wrong with you helping us. Sorry, a little bit of tinnitus. Dinner had already been served at the Smithers house. Maud Bowyer retired outside the garden where she sat, pursuing the illustrated pages from the book entitled Fashion Hints for the Lady About Town. Though she gave the impression of enjoying her country stay, Maud was longing to be back among her friends in London. Young Wilf slouched out into the garden, a heavy bandage and splint on his right arm, which was resting in a sling. He scowled at Maud and slumped into a cast-iron chair, drumming his heels hard against the legs. Maud glanced off over the top of her book at him. Wilfred, do you have to make that din? He drummed his steel-tipped boots louder, staring defiantly at him. Name's not Wilfred, it's Wilf. Closing the book, she stared primly at him. All right then, will you cease that infernal noise, Wilf? He stopped, smiling maliciously, and started strumming again. I can do what I like around here. I live here. You don't. I'll tell your father. Go and tell him. I don't care. Maudie massaged the side of her forehead daintily. The noise was really getting to her. Finally, she stamped her foot. Why don't you go up to your room? I thought you were supposed to be injured. You should be in bed. Wolf was enjoying tormenting her and beat his heels faster. Mother says I need fresh air. You go up to your room. Maudie knew she had lost the battle of wills. Before she retired to her room, she stood over Wilf, hissing nastily, "Stupid village clod. Wilfred, Wilfred, Wilfred." Wilf continued drumming, grinning smugly at her. Mrs. Maudie Toffee Nose. She stalked off without another word, her thoughts racing. Maybe when her father's toffs came up from London, she could find a reason for one of them to give Wilf an accidental cuff across the ear. They were good at those things like that. When she had gone, Wilf produced a pen and paper from his sling and began laboriously writing, trying to use his left hand. It was useless. Regina would write for him. This time he would fix Ben good, without violence or fighting. He sat waiting for his gang to visit. Chapter 26. Dusk was taking the place of daylight. Outside the lace-curtained windows, a nightingale's melody was punctuated by an owl hoot and dusty moth beats, their wings on the window panes, like an effort to reach the interior light. It was just before Mrs. Wynn's bedtime. She sat in the kitchen at the kitchen table with Ben, trying to help him with the riddle. He had told her of the discoveries that he and Amy, Alex, and John had made so far. The old lady seemed tired and despondent. "Do you really think any of this will help me and the village, Ben? Time's growing shorter by the day now. This is all a bit airy-fairy compared to the way Smithers and his London firm are forging ahead." I looked at one of those clearance notices posted in the square. It's official, so full of legal jargon, all where to, for, and here and after, and clause B and subsection D. It made my head spin. Oh, I wish you could come back at them with something more solid instead of a few ideas based on guesswork. Ben saw the old lady was close to tears. She was plainly scared and worried by the entire situation. He shook her hand. "Stop fretting, Mrs. Wynne. Everything will turn out for the best. You'll see. Now come and help me with this problem. Turn as a third gospel maker would to the house named for the rock. Does that mean anything for you?" Mrs. Wynne went to warm milk. "There are 4 gospel makers: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're all referred to in that order, so Luke must be the 3rd gospel maker. Does that make any sense?" Ben watched her spooning cocoa and sugar into a mug. Yes, you're right. So which way would Luke turn? North, south, east, west, left, right, backward, forward? The black Labrador was lying with his chin on both front paws. He chuckled. "That's a question. Which way would Luke look? Luke, look. Get it?" Ben looked sternly at the dog. "This is no time for jokes. If you can't help, then take a nap." Ben closed both eyes, thinking, "Luke looks left." Ben answered the thought. "How do you know that?" The dog opens his eyes. "I can't explain it, but it sounds right, doesn't it? Luke looks left." Ben said aloud, "Luke looks left. What do you think, Miss Wynne?" She paused from stirring warm milk into the mixture of the jug. Luke looks left. L. Of course, L. R is for right. Luke starts with L, so must be it. Well done, my boy." Ned snorted aloud and closed his eyes again. However, he soon opened them again with the old lady filled his bowl with hot cocoa. She stirred warm milk for Horatio. He's never been fond of cocoa, so I give him more milk. Ned threw out a thought as he slurped cocoa noisily. Foolish old feline. Mrs. Wynne was far too tired to continue her clue solving. Ben took her arm and walked her through to the downstairs room where she slept. When he returned to the kitchen, Ned was standing alert, watching the door. He communicated the thought to his master. Keep quiet, mate. There's somebody outside. The patter of receding footsteps sent Ben hurrying to the door. He opened it to see that fat form of Tomo scurrying through the gateway. A note had been fixed to the door with a tack. After allowing Ned out to check the garden for other intruders, Ben tore the note and read it. Wolf's hand was useless for writing. He had dictated to Regina, but her spelling and grammar were no better than his. He smiled as he pursued the untidy pencil scrawl. I can't fight you because my hand is damaged, but I want to talk to you. Be outside Evans' shop tomorrow night, 10 minutes before midnight. W.S. Grange Gang leader. P.S. You better be there. Ned trotted in from the garden, shaking his head. No sign of anyone out there. Ben, what's in the note? The boy folded the paper and shoved it in his pocket. Just another of Wilf's little games. Tell you tomorrow. What say we go to bed now, eh, pal? The Labrador wagged his tail lazily. Good idea. Oh, look who's at the window. It's Horatio. He had followed the dog outside, and Ben, not knowing, shut the door on him. The cat stood tapping on the window pane and meowing plaintively. Ben led him in by the window, and Horatio cleared the sink in one smooth leap. Landing lightly on the floor, he glared accusingly at Ned. Ben chuckled. What's he saying? Ned translated the cat's thought. The usual gobbledygook. Sardines, milk, butterflies, mice, and so on. Says he likes being out of night, but prefers to finish his milk inside. The big dog drained his cocoa bowl. Sensible cat. Come on, Ned. Bed for us. Good night, Horatio. Ned followed his master upstairs, chuntering to himself. Sensible cat, mock paw. Great foolish furball, more like it. Chapter 27. Early morning shoppers were drifting in Chapel Vale Village Square, and shopkeepers splashed pails of water about, cleaning their section of walkway and entrance. A market gardener was delivering fresh vegetables and flowers to the greengrocers. The garden's horse clopped its metal-shod hooves against the cobblestones, causing sparks to fly. Feeling slightly crestfallen, Ben arrived back at the back of the almshouse, only to find Alex and Amy already there with the old seaman. Furthermore, Amy had already solved the Luke to the left problem. Ben did not show his disappointment, telling himself that it was better for the villagers to help themselves anyway. He smiled at Amy. Clever bit of thinking, that L for Luke and L for left, I say. For ages, trying to sort it out in my bed last night, my mind was blank. Good job, you solved it, Amy. John sat down on the window edge, stroking his beard. Aye, our Amy's a bright girl, but it still don't solve much. Turn to the left, Ben. What do you see? Ben did as John bid him, looking to the left in a straight line. Nothing much, just the usual countryside, trees, farmland, some fields, and the church on top of the hill. Amy stood alongside him. We're looking for the house named for the rock, though that's what that's supposed to be, goodness knows. Alex had an idea. Maybe there's a rock or cottage out there called Gilbitrar? That's a rock. Sometimes people name their houses after a place they visited, or religious people might name their house after the Rock of Ages, like the hymn. Ben nodded. You could be right. Are there any places out there like that, named after a rock? Who'd know a thing like that? John stood up. Mr. Blaithwaite will know. Let's go and ask him. As they were about to pull the heavy door of the almshouse shut, behind him a voice called out, "Now then, young'uns, she's running fine today." A cheery, ruddy-faced fellow, clad in dairyman's smock and gaiters, reined up smartly, varnished gig pulled by a dun mare. Ben followed Amy and Alex as they ran to meet him. "Good morning, Will." Amy patted the mare's flank. "Is Delilah over her colic?" She looks well." He eyed the mare fondly. "Oh, Delilah's fine. Just a button, thanks to your old dad. I don't know what's in that medicine he gave her, but it certainly got rid of her colic. I'm just finished my milk and eggs round. Why don't you come up to the farm for a visit? Elena be pleased to see you." "Hi, John Peterson, you old hermit. Fancy a cup of decent tea and some scones up at my farmhouse?" Moments later, they were in the jig, all sitting empty on an empty milk churns and egg grates. As Delilah jogged spiritedly up the back lane toward the hill beyond, Alex looked around. "Where's Ned?" Ben shrugged. "Oh, that fellow? He's probably off exploring somewhere. Don't worry about that old boy. He'll find us when he wants to. Is it far to the farm?" Alex gestured up ahead. "About halfway up the hill. It's called Hillside Farm. Will Drummond, our local dairy farmer, his family have had a place up there for centuries. My dad often tends to his animals when they're ill. He says Will's a good man. You'll like him. But his mother knows if there's any place named after a rock hereabouts. She knows everything." Will's wife, Elena, was a bustling lady with an ever-present smile. Holding an infant or two, just over 2 years old, on her forearm, she came out into the cobbled farmyard to meet them. "Look, little Willem, here's Daddy and friends with him. Come on, Delilah, my beauty. I got an apple for you." Introductions were made all around. Ben and Alex helped the dairyman unload the empty churns and egg boxes before going in for tea. Elaine Drummond's scones, served with clotted cream and strawberry jam, were a real treat. As they ate, Ben explained all they were doing in an effort to save Chapel Vale, but how time was running out and how they couldn't figure out the house named for a rock. It was cool and shady in the old low-beamed farmhouse with its whitewashed walls, tile floor, and little bullseye panel windows. Will's mother, Sarah, sat installed in her wig chair by the fireplace, a Bible upon her knee, listening carefully until Ben finished talking. She was bright, alert little woman, quick and bird-like interactions. Drawing a knotted black shawl around her narrow shoulders, she shook her head disapprovingly at John. His three young friends tapped the Bible meaningfully. "Place named after the rock. I can tell you haven't read your scriptures properly, but that's no surprise. Most of these days don't seem to have time to heed the word of the Lord." Will chided her gently. Now, Ma, don't take so... Just 'cause folks don't study the scripture all the time doesn't mean they ain't good people. Look at me, I don't read the Bible a lot, but I'm an honest and hard-working." His mother gave him a hard stare. "You'd better be a lot better if you did. Will, and your friends too. They should know that the Lord says to his disciple, 'Thou art Peter, and upon his rock I will build my church.' 'Tis written here is in the good book. So tell me, what's the name of the church atop the hill?" Will blurted out, "St. Peter's." The old woman could not help looking slightly smug as she sat back patting her Bible. "Tell me the rest of your puzzle." Alex recited the lines from memory. "'Twixt here and there, you must stop to drink, your first reward to unlock." Elaine smote the table so hard she almost upset her teapot. I got it! Baby William thought it was a good game and he began banging on the tabletop and giggling. Elena passed him to his father. Go to Daddy, there's a good lad. I got it. I solved your rhyme. Hillside Farms Dairies, halfway twixt the almhouse and St. Peter's Church. We're the only place round here with a well. Will bounced the baby up and down on his knee. Ain't your mom the clever one, Baby William? The old seaman leaned close across the table, his scone and tea forgotten. I never knew you had a well here. Will allowed the baby to slide down and toddle across to Amy. Been a well on this land as long as there's been a farm. Come on, I'll show you. Across the farmyard from the milking shed was a separate stone building used as a storehouse. Will lit a lantern and hung it from a center beam. Sacks of potatoes, carrots, turnips, and root vegetables ranged around the wall. Cheeses lay on a wooden platform and hams hung from the rafters. In the center stood the well, housed by a circular stone wall with a bucket and pulley. Elaine leaned over the wall and shuddered. Dark old place 'tis, though the water's cold and sweet. Will wound the bucket down, and they heard it splash into the water below. He hauled it up, filled to the brim. Best water in the country, I reckon. Comes from an underground stream, purified by the limestone and clear as a bell. What do you reckon to look for down there? John stared into the darkness. The first reward. Elaine chuckled. No reward for you, John Peterson. You're far too big and heavy to fit into a water pail. Immediately, Ben volunteered. I'll go down. Armed with another small lantern, Ben sat astride the water pail. John and Will manned the pulley handle, the lantern giving instructions. There are some tools of mine in the bucket if you need 'em. Go carefully now, lad, and keep tight hold on that rope. The pulley creaked as the two men lowered Ben down into the well shaft. As Amy stood by, holding little William's hand, what is it like down there, Ben? The boy's voice echoed up the shaft. Just an old circular wall, nothing much to see. I'll look at one side on the way down and the other side on the way up. Hold that, Will. My feet are touching the water. John peered down at the light far below. The rope began straining and going side to side. He called down, steady on, Ben. Don't bounce about so much. I was just turning around so I can see the other half of the wall. That's better. Haul up slowly now. Will and John bent their backs at the task. They had not given more than 4 turns when Ben yelled, stop! Lowered a touch, a bit more. There, that's it. Alex poked his head over. What is it, Ben? What have you found? One of the wall stones bigger than the rest, twice as big. It's not cemented like the others. Someone's joined it in with lead. Wait a moment. There's a dull thud of a hammer and chisel, and Ben called up, Aye, it's lead, easy to get out. It's very old and perished. I can almost pull it out by hand. A splashing sounded from below. Sorry, Will, someone's fallen into the water. The young farmer leaned over the edge. Don't you worry about that, boy. The stream will wash it away. Let the stone go if you have to. They could hear Ben grunting with exertion as he maneuvered the heavy stone, pushing it back and forth, using the chisel to lever, reporting its progress as he went. I've almost got it half out. Whew, it's a big one, but it's moving fairly well. Shall I try to get it into the bucket, Will? No, the weight would be too much. Let it go. This was followed by a booming splash as Ben shouted out. Well, that cooled me down. I'm soaked. Wait, I've got my arm in the hole where the stone was. There's something here. Little William joined in the cheering that broke out. Ben yelled above the din. I've got it. Haul away, my hearties. Take me up. I've got it. Ben Alex and Amy joined Will and John helping to turn the handles. Ben arrived, beaming over the well shaft at them. Let's get out into the light for a proper look, pals. Elena cleared the farmhouse table and they set the odd-looking object on a muddy lump, about the size of a normal house brick. Ben prodded it. Anyone fancy a guess of what this is? Elaine stopped little William trying to climb up the table. Dirty old thing, what do you reckon it is, Ma? Will's mother reached out a stick-like finger and scraped across the lump and brought it close to her face. We won't know till we get all that tallow off it. The younger boy looked baffled. Tallow? She rubbed it between her fingers. Aye, lad. Wax. Made from animal fat. Tallow. John took out his knife. You mean there's something inside the lump of tallow? Let's take a look. Good protection, wax is. A thing could stay forever encased in it. Elaine stayed the seaman's hand. Don't cut it. You might damage whatever's inside. Let me melt it off. The object was put into an iron pot in which Will placed on the stone hearth right above the fire bars. They stood around watching it. Ben felt the room becoming oppressively hot. Smells of lamp oil and sea-damp clothing left to dry came drifting back to his memory. The swell of a deck playing beneath his feet combed with the eternal sound of the relentless sea. Oh, I can see a big golden ring. Amy's delighted shout cut through her thoughts, bringing him back to reality. Will's mother was waving her apron. Whew, take it out of my kitchen, golden ring or not, it stinks. Will wrapped a cloth around his hands and carried the pot out by its handle. The iron vessel was hot and the wax was melting rapidly. As the boy was glad to be out in the fresh air, the solid sludge around the wax had dissolved and sunk. He could see a thing lying in the metal clear wax. It was not a ring. Amy had only glimpsed the rim. It was a cup made from gold, an altar chalice. The old seaman fished it out with 2 pieces of twig and then took the cloth from Will and carefully cleaned it off. Oh, I've never. Look what a marvelous thing St. Luke sent to us. The chalice looked as new as the day it was made, beautifully crafted in solid gold, covered in intricate carvings, with 4 pigeon egg rubies set into the solid gold base. Amy picked the chalice up reverently and held it high, letting the sun glint off the golden rubies. The first reward, but what was it doing halfway down a well shaft? Ben shrugged. Who knows? I'd better go and get Miss Wynne. She'll want to see this. It must be worth a great fortune. Elaine came up with a good suggestion. Let's make it a surprise for her. I'll make dinner for us tonight. Ben, you tell Miss Wynne she's invited. My will call at the house this evening to pick you both up. Mine seen Winnie for ages, have you, Ma? Will's mother bustled back to the farmhouse, calling up, I'd like to see Winnie. Better get the place cleaned up, though. Have to sprinkle some lilac water around to get rid of the old tallow smell. Ned was waiting anxiously for Ben when he got back. Ben patted his friend's head. Where have you been, mate? You missed cream, tea, and scones up at the Drummond's farm. Oh, I've got something to tell you. The black lad allowed himself to be stroked as he passed a thought. I've got something to tell you first, Ben. I went up to the Smithers house and heard Wilf plotting with his gang. I was by the back edge and I heard him talking on the lawn. Listen to this. They're terrified of John. Had some trouble with him. Call him the Mad Professor. But they don't know that you've met him. Wilf is going to dare you to go inside the almshouse at midnight. He reckons John will eat you alive, or whatever it is that the Mad Professors do to whoever goes into their almshouses. Just thought you'd like to know. Ben shook his head and grinned. Then I will just have to look sufficiently frightened when he dares me. Wait till I tell John. Now let me tell you of what I found today. And we'll stop there. Oh my goodness. Will they be able to find the final clue for those thugs from London? Get down to Castaways. Alright, let me sing to you. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of United States Marines. Our flags unfurled to every breeze, from dawn to setting sun. We have fought in every clime and place where you could take a gun. In the snow of far-off northern lands, and in sunny tropic scenes, you will find us always on the job, the United States Marines. Here's health to you and to our corps, which we are proud to serve. In many a strife we fought for life, and never lost our nerve. If the Army and the Navy ever looked on heaven's scenes, they will find the streets are guarded by United States Marines. It's number 5. Hoorah. Flowers are blooming. Nice wind in the air today. All right, let me pray for you. Dear Jesus, please have your hand of protection, everyone, work in their lives. In your holy name, amen. Okay, thank you, viewers, chatters, listeners, and feelers. Be safe out there, be smart, value your own life, and be brave. Emmanuel, God with us.